I want to make a list as to who most likely is the secret child of Beyond Netero that lies in the 14 princes of the Kaken Empire. Because there's been a lot of heavy discussion, a lot of big theories, a lot of people just assuming they've got it completely figured out here. So I want to go over every single individual prince and discuss why they are or are not the Beyond Netero child. I think there are a lot of princes that have really good reasons to be heavily considered, and I think there are a lot of princes that the reasons why they're being considered just don't make no sense whatsoever. So I want to make sure that everyone understands who to look out for and who to completely disregard. With S being very much most likely to be the child, A being definitely could be, B being, you know, half, very unlikely, C being if hell froze over, and D is literally no chance whatsoever. Starting off, I think we can immediately disregard Prince Benjamin as a potential Beyond Netero child. He does fit certain qualifications of the potential child, although we'll talk a little bit more as this segment goes on as to why certain traits might not directly be traits to look out for. Some traits may be red herrings. So one of the first things that I want to discuss is a lot of people thought maybe Prince Benjamin, because he is one of the only princes that knew Nen and was aware of Nen and had their own Hatsu well before going on to the Succession War. Another one of those princes that we'll get into right afterwards is Camilla, although Camilla has a little bit more reasoning than some other princes do. Kurapika himself assumes Prince Benjamin would immediately be the person that Beyond Netero is putting all of his cards behind, but Long He, who is one of the sacrificial lambs of the Beyond Netero child scheme, does admit that they highly doubt Prince Benjamin would be the reason for Beyond Netero's planning. For one, Prince Benjamin, even though having Nen awakened before the Succession War, very unlikely to be a Netero child, because for one, there's very little chance that Nasubi's first child of all the 14 and all of the illegitimate children, his first child with his first wife, wasn't his. That's already tough to believe. It's possible, tough to believe. I don't know if you've seen Queen Unma, but I recommend you go look at a picture of her. I'll put one on screen when I'm editing this. Her and Benjamin look like exact replicas of each other. Her genes are very strong, not Nasubi's when it comes to birthing Benjamin Hugo Rowe, okay? This man looks just like his mom. I highly doubt he has no genes from Queen Unma. And again, I think Long He makes sense that one, Prince Benjamin, clearly Nasubi's child. Despite having Nen early on before the Succession War, that's literally like the only thing he has going for him. Other than that, there's really no other major traits of Netero family that I would oppose to him. Now, his sister, Camilla, does have a little bit more potential of being a Netero child. And let me explain this. Where Prince Benjamin, who again is the first prince and the first child of Nasubi, the first legitimate child at least, Prince Camilla is the second. Not from Queen Unma, but from second Queen Dwazul. And we'll bring up Dwazul a couple times in this video. She is one of the most suspect queens of all time. She has a lot of spies laid out in the Succession War. She has done a lot of questionable deeds throughout the Succession War. A lot of the people, at least one of the people that we suspect to potentially be Silent Majority's user in the Nen training murder mystery going on, is a direct spy of Dwazul. Also, as we get into some of the other princes, you'll see why I think there's a little bit of a conspiracy going on in regards to some of the other children. So, while Camilla doesn't necessarily fit the Netero look, there are a couple things that could point Camilla to being a Netero child. One, she was a Nen user before becoming a Succession War contestant. Now, while that doesn't work for Prince Benjamin, it could potentially work for Camilla. However, she does look a lot like her mother as well. Now, that being said, Camilla does have very Netero-like traits about her. Her personality, she's a very strong person, very willing to do what it takes. She was literally going to Prince Benjamin's room to murder Prince Benjamin herself had she not been intercepted by one of the queens. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that queen is Dwazul, right? That interferes and stops her. So the queens, I think, are not as complacent in the succession war as we should think. However, Camilla is very low on the totem pole. The only other trait that I would espouse to Camilla that's very Netero-like is we know the Neteros are very, although they're very self-serving, they're very selfish. They make very big declarations to the world and are very happy to accept help from people that are either like-minded, strong people, or are competent enough to be equal with them. So it makes sense that Camilla, of all people, would have a very interesting trait of, just like, you know, Isaac Netero, selfish, self-serving individual. It just so happened that a lot of their deeds that they did happened to be very good for mankind and the Hunter Association, whereas Beyond Netero is the exact opposite of that. Very self-serving, very selfish, portraying themselves as someone that, you know, forget race, gender, you know, social class, all of you are my brothers if you come with me, and then behind closed doors being like, I'm taking the world by storm, you're either with me or you're against me, and you're dying beside me. Camilla takes all the unwanteds as her own personal guard, which is very unlike Kaken Empire life. So she does what she wants, goes against the Kaken Empire. She's very, again, willing to go out and grab hold of life by the horns. So she's got Netero personality, Netero instincts. She also has had Nen before being on the whale boat. However, again, very early child of Nasubi. You know, I would even potentially raise Camilla to like a B, potentially, which is like half and half, could be, couldn't be, because another thing that's important to remember is Netero has been planning this infiltration of the Kaken Empire for over 30 years, what Long He tells us. There's a couple different ways that we could completely interpret that statement, because Long He mentions that all of the sacrificial lambs, the time bombs that go off when they die, are potentially going to curse and kill a target. They're all discarded from birth, right? Long He realizes this when she realizes she did not adopt all of the traits that her father would have wanted her to, or that she thinks she should have. That could be why her and her other bodyguards and her other children and siblings were discarded. I mean, you have to look at Solkov, who is potentially a Beyond Netero child as well, admits to awakening Zetsu as a child in chapter 402. He isn't aware of being a Beyond child. It shows that what if Beyond was discarding these children because he was continually trying to create an heir that would not only pass into the Kaken Empire as one of Nasubi's children, but also be strong enough to tackle the succession war on their own. While it's possible that a lot of people are theorizing the Beyond child has to be one of the older princes, specifically because he's been plotting this for so long, why would he throw caution to the wind and have one of the younger children be his plant when an older person that has had much more time to develop their powers, their skills as a warrior, and their Nen abilities would be much more competently prepared for the succession war than someone else? Why I make this whole reasoning and why I think it's important to bring up is, sure, that's a really good argument to have it be one of the older princes, but a good argument for one of the newer princes would be if Beyond Netero was discarding these children because they were unworthy, they didn't inherit the traits that he was looking for, and he cursed them because of it. That could mean, for one, that the Beyond Netero child that is a prince wasn't cursed and discarded because they were everything that Beyond was looking for from the very beginning. And if that's the case, while it could also be one of the newer princes because they finally were born with the traits Beyond was looking for, that could mean that one of the Beyond Netero children doesn't necessarily need to be cursed and have Nen from birth, you know, specifically because he didn't need to curse them and do the Nen attack. They were born perfect. So while I think a lot of people are harping on they had to have been a Nen user from the start, I think it's quite likely that they don't have to be a Nen user from the start, because they don't have to be cursed, even though they could very much, the Beyond child could be cursed just as much as they could not be cursed. Again, which brings up what I was mentioning before, is where being a Nen user from birth is a potential trait of the Beyond Netero child, they could just as well not be a trait of the Beyond Netero child. So while it's easy to rule out the younger princes, it doesn't completely rule them out. Prince Zhonglei, I think, is very clearly not a Beyond Netero child, although I'm sometimes even willing to put him in like the C territory because he's just such an unsuspecting person. Zhonglei just, I mean, for one, doesn't have any of the Netero necessarily, I would say, exterior traits. He's very intellectual. He's very reserved. His guardian spirit beast is held specifically for what comes after the war as opposed to what happens during it. So he's a king that thinks of the future as opposed to a king that focuses on the succession war. He's the father of the he's the son of the Nasubi's third wife, Tang Zhongli. He has no affinity for Nen whatsoever, although be it he's very strong contender of the succession war. I think it's not impossible to completely rule him out and put him in the same list as like D tier with Benjamin, but I don't think there's anything that points to him being a Netero child, especially with how little his mother is involved in the succession war, how very clearly his mother is involved in his birthing, the fact that he's not aware of Nen, for how old he is, you'd think he'd be much more prepared for not to say prepared is one thing, because again, his guardian spirit beast is prepared for what comes after, and he's handled himself very well in the succession war. But for a very passive, pacifist, non-fighting prince with no Nen whatsoever, and to the fact that he's not even able to really accurately determine his own guardian spirit beast's ability, I just don't think he has anything that makes me think he could be a Netero child. I think Kacho is pretty easily listed as not a Netero child. One, they were twins with Fugetsu. I don't think Fugetsu or Kacho are likely to be Netero children at all, even though, weirdly enough, a lot of people were theorizing that Fugetsu was cursed upon Kacho's death, and that was actually the injection that happened, and that is actually the evil spirits that are attacking Fugetsu and why her life energy is being drained, because Kacho died and her curse affected the twin Fugetsu, which is very unlikely. She is the daughter, both of them are daughters of the queen Psycho Hugoro, and I don't suspect either of them. One's Seiko has shown no underhandedness in the succession war. Kacho has died. Nothing came of that. Fugetsu was both of them also almost escaped the succession war. And I think Beyond Netero's child would not have easily, one, escaped the succession war without Beyond knowing about it. And two, I feel like Beyond's people would be much more involved in their existence in the succession war. Melody and Kaiser have infiltrated way too much in regards to Fugetsu and Kacho to make me think either of them are the Netero child. Now, Kaiser is suspect and clearly seems to be working for someone, potentially not even working for another prince, but for either the Justice Department themselves, and either he wants to completely derail the political ideals of the Kaken Empire and put hands back to the people, or he's working for Hulkenberg or someone else entirely, maybe Beyond. I just don't see, I don't see either of them being Netero children. It just doesn't seem likely. Neither of them have Netero traits. Neither of them have strong potential for Nen. I think Fugetsu would be less likely to be afflicted by the curse if they had a strong affinity for Nen. And also, they don't look anything like Netero, and also they both look the exact same. So, just unlikely. Now, Prince Debeppa is another C tier, because while it's not completely outright outlawed that they are not a Netero Beyond child, I just think it's very unlikely. While they do look very differently, like if you put Debeppa next to Camilla, they do not look like each other whatsoever. Debeppa has very masculine features, like insanely masculine. It's the nose, the broad jaw, She's also very much not interested in the succession war as it comes to fighting. That's why she was very easily willing to make an alliance with not just Kurapika and 14th Prince Wobley, but make an alliance with 4th Prince Saradnik and 3rd Prince Zhonglei if they needed to. Tubeppa is not interested in the succession war. She's very much like Zhonglei. That's why her spirit beast isn't necessarily there to help in the succession war. It's there to help with what comes after. We do get subtle hints that it's a conditional type activational Nen ability that the Guardian Spirit Beast has in Chapter 402, when Tubeppa declares that their guards are going to stick around Zhonglei to push more heat towards Zhonglei than her, and that activates her Guardian Spirit Beast, or seemingly activates it. Tubeppa does not know much about Nen, can't use Nen, doesn't really seem to have potential for Nen. However, they are a very intellectual, very laid-back person, and they look just very different from their other peers. And we saw with Long He, I'll put a picture of Long He on screen when I edit this, we saw with Long He the very masculine traits of Isaac Netero and beyond Netero very much pushed through the Kakin genes, or Queen Dwazul's genes, whatever, gene of person we are, or whatever gene of the mother of the Netero child, right? Long He has very masculine traits and very Netero-like traits. Tubeppa suffers from that same affliction. While I do not suspect Tubeppa, I think Tubeppa has more likeliness of being a Netero child than Zhonglei, while very much less likely than Camilla. Like, it's a could not, could maybe, but very doubtful. Very, very doubtful in my honest opinion. Now, up next, you have Prince Tyson. I don't believe it whatsoever. Prince Tyson is the daughter of the 4th wife, Katrono, and she looks just like her mom. Those masculine Netero traits have not appeared in Tyson. Tyson does not have an affinity towards Nen. Tyson does not really have any traits of Netero that would tip me off. Tyson's Guardian Spirit Beast is very much functioning as a during the Succession War and after the Succession War threat, but it's very different because it's mainly used to gain favor and have the people that read the Book of Tyson, which again, Prince Tyson is basically a cult leader, Prince Tyson's teachings, and as you learn more of the teachings, you become and fall more in love with Prince Tyson due to their Guardian Spirit Beast. And while I would say that Prince Tyson has the Netero charm and charisma, just like I would argue so too does Camilla, without the Guardian Spirit Beast, Tyson is not that persuasive. Tyson does not have that great of charisma. I would just throw Tyson out the gate. There's nothing that makes me think she would be related to Netero whatsoever. Prince Sali Saleh, we can rule out completely. Prince Sali Saleh, although he had that charisma, we know bro was fucking. His Guardian Spirit Beast very much helped with that, and helped in causing adoration and affection in people towards Sali Saleh. And it's funny too, because if he had just left his room, his Guardian Spirit Beast would probably have done so much damage to the Succession War. And his Guardian Spirit Beast really was fit for a king of all people. He was just too busy thinking with his dick. And that not only led to his death, but it also led me to thinking it's very unlikely that he was Netero's child, because Netero would not have let someone fuck with his plans like that so easily. Beyond Netero's child is clearly someone that is not only invested in the Succession War and becoming king, but they're definitely also invested in seeing what is next in the Dark Continent. So I don't think any princes that just have no drive whatsoever are likely to be the Beyond Netero child. That is also why I believe 12th Prince, what's her name, Mimose, I believe, definitely can't be a Netero child once she's already dead. That didn't go well for them. Their Guardian Spirit Beast was very indirect and aggressive. Wasn't really fit for the Succession War entirely. It was a great ability, but was easily parsed out, easily taken down, and Mimose lost their life because of that, because they did not have enough influence in the Kakin Empire to keep her safe. And I would imagine any Beyond Netero child is going to have a significant amount of influence in the Kaken Empire, enough so much to keep them safe at least until the very end of the Succession War. I'm not saying that the Beyond Netero child can't be beaten, in the Succession War. Quite possible. I'm not saying they've got secret forces or secret soldiers that are always keeping them close and keeping them safe. It's just they're much more likely to have that than someone like, Mimose or Saleh Saleh or Prince Tyson, who no one gives a fuck about, Up next, we've got Prince Luzurus. So Luzurus has had a big spotlight put on him in one of the most recent chapters of 402, specifically because, for one, he is suspected of having the Guardian Spirit Beast curse on Fugetsu, which we know, based off of his Guardian Spirit Beast, it's very drug-like, where it introduces a desire to someone and then has them chase that desire and sucks their life energy or catches them in the trap after they succumb to their desire. So that fits the bill of Fugetsu's curse entirely, but also we know that Guardian Spirit Beasts cannot directly attack other princes or other Guardian Spirit Beasts. So one, this could just be an indirect attack, quote unquote, because Fugetsu fell for the trap, but it also could be because Luzurus has his own Nen ability that we don't already know about. Luzurus has definitely been one of the most mysterious princes so far, especially considering the fact that we know he is heavily integrated into the Kaken underground with the mafia and their drug trade. That's why we always see him smoking weed, just dealing drugs. He's very much involved, and drugs are a big part of his life, which would make sense, one, why his Guardian Spirit Beast ability would kind of act like a drug, but also that if he did have a Nen ability of his own, it would be drug-related as well. We don't know if he's a Nen user, how much he knows about Nen, but we do know he is pretty damn resourceful when it comes to using his intelligence. Just from meeting Kacho quickly in 402, we are already aware that he calls suspect and cap on Kacho's death, because the death letter that was given to him reads much more as a plan to make him not like Saradnik and oppose Prince Saradnik than it does as a genuine death letter of her will. So Luzurus is one already pretty adept, so he's pretty smart. Some of these close-up pictures of Luzurus do give off pretty Netero features. He's definitely got some lobage, he's got some nose going on. Luzurus also having such crazy ties to not just the underground mafia, but being the prince that is on the lowest totem pole, not so much in rank, but other princes thinking he's a threat. Yeah, nobody ever suspects the pothead, but that's exactly why we should be worried about him. He's very level-headed, and very simple, chill. That's why none of his princes suspect him of, one, being proactive in the war and fighting against them, to the point that none of them have even targeted Luzurus. Luzurus has pretty much just chilled in his room this entire time, doing not shit. I think while it's unclear if Luzurus is an Beyond Netero child, I think it's important to remember that he is a child of Queen Dwazul. And why do I bring up Queen Dwazul? Well, this is going to be the major chunk of this video before I touch base on the two youngest prospects we still have left, Prince Miriam and Prince Woble, because a lot of this has to do with the three princes that I'm looking at right here: Luzurus, Saradnik, and Hulkenberg. So Luzurus and Hulkenberg on paper are the sons of Queen Dwazul, where Prince Saradnik is the only other son of Queen Unma. So he is, technically speaking, the full related brother of Prince Benjamin and the first queen of the Kaken Empire, which is a strong hold on the kingship. But also, you have Queen Dwazul, who has 4 kids in the Succession War. She's popping them out constantly. Now, as I mentioned a little bit before with Prince Camilla and Prince Tubepa, Dwazul has definitely, while she's not upfront about it, has revealed she does have her own reservations about certain children winning the Succession War and whatnot. But one thing we do know that's also very suspect is that Prince Hulkenberg, someone who is a very high potential person to be a Beyond Netero child based off of multiple theories I've seen online, on Reddit, and what everybody thinks, especially with 402 revealing that there is secrets in regards to his birth. I'm going to immediately crunch those theories now and debunk that as a red herring. Now, obviously, I could be wrong. I will admit that. But the reason why I don't think that Hulkenberg is a Beyond Netero child, because if it wasn't for this theory, I would put Hulkenberg at an A. Right now, I can only put him at a B, and here's why. Hulkenberg does not know Nen. We get confirmation from Balsamico and Prince Benjamin that Hulkenberg for sure could not use Nen until his guardian spirit beast awakened possession arrow within him after taking the succession war seriously. While it is stated that, I stated before, that is not necessarily a guaranteed trait of the Beyond Netero child, especially with the fact that once Hulkenberg got a Nen ability, that Nen ability was one of the most OP Nen abilities of the entire series, making him one of the most dangerous threats in the succession war literally overnight. Those things kind of contradict each other. One thing that I think is very clear is that if you look at Prince Benjamin and you also look at Prince Hulkenberg, they actually look more alike than any other prince. That's weird, isn't it? Prince Hulkenberg and Sorodnik, you put them next to each other, they really don't look too alike. They look very different, honestly. Now, obviously, could that be because Sorodnik took on much more of Nasubi's traits? Sure, definitely could be. But here's another scenario here for you. We know from birth, Hulkenberg was ostracized by his family, primarily his sister Camilla and his mother Dwazul. Up until now, we've never really known why, but we know that's why Hulkenberg went to school away from the Kaken Empire. That's why he has such his liberal, very westernized mindset and wants to bring democracy to the Kaken Empire, why he was opposed to the succession war at first, and why he's so different amongst his peers. But we never really get confirmation as to why Hulkenberg is so ostracized. Now, a lot of people would go, oh, he's the Beyond Netero child, and Dwazul always knew that. That's why she never took him seriously. She knew he wasn't her son, so why would she ever care about him? While that's obvious, and that would explain the secrets behind Hulkenberg's birth, there is another theory that I've seen going on that honestly I kind of very much subscribe to and makes a lot of sense if you put some pieces together here. If we are to assume that Hulkenberg and Benjamin looking very alike, having the same nose and everything, is more than just coincidence. And also we are to add in the fact that Sorodnik doesn't really look very much like not just his mom, Unma, doesn't really look much like Nasubi either. So obviously we can't trust looks, visuals alone, but let's say we can. Another scenario that would make a lot of sense as to why Dwazul was very against Hulkenberg, even though in a short conversation between Dwazul and Camilla responds and says, Dwazul, you're the only one that can talk to Hulkenberg and get us on our side. If that's the case, there has to be more to that relationship, right? We also know that Sorodnik and Hulkenberg, two very unlikely people, are the closest princes in what might be the entire succession war besides, obviously, Fugetsu and Kacho. In the banquet, the only prince that gives Hulkenberg the time of day, to the point that Hulkenberg even admits, the only prince that is even willing to accept me as a sibling is Sorodnik. We are the only two that look at each other as equals. We're the only two that are friendly to each other. Sorodnik, while being friendly with his other princes, doesn't give a fuck. Like, Sorodnik completely dips out on Tubeppa's alliance as soon as he realizes he can use Nen. One, I think it's very weird that Togashi would reveal the Beyond Netero child plan and then also reveal Hulkenberg as the child afterwards. I think a completely different opportunity would be, what if the reason Dwazul ostracized Hulkenberg, why Hulkenberg is different from all of his other princes, just like Benjamin is, because remember, Benjamin has a very tenacious relationship with his other princes. What if Sorodnik and Hulkenberg, Queen Dwazul and Queen Unma, in some way, shape, or form, with, again, how I mentioned Queen Unma is responsible for interfering in the succession war on her own accord when it comes to potential silent majority holder Salaka, and also interfering in the murder of Prince Benjamin from Princess Camilla. You also have Dwazul having multiple spies that are pulling their own strings and also possibly calling in different interferences in the succession war, as well as letting Camilla do as she pleases in trying to take out Benjamin. What if Dwazul and Unma have more conspiracies than we like to think, and Saradnik and Hulkenberg were switched at some point in birth? Now, obviously, this swap would involve Beyond Netero in some way, shape, or form. Whether that be Beyond Netero coming to Unma and Dwazul in, let's say, betrayal of King Nasubi. Because remember, a lot of people are like, well, they're his queens. Why would they betray Nasubi? There's no reason. This is a king that has 14 children plus more, with more than like 8, possibly more than 10 women at this point. You can't tell me not one of those queens is a scorned woman looking for revenge. You just can't. You just can't. You can't tell me that. Especially the first queen, the second queen. The first and second queen hate each other at first. Let's say they come together and like, you know what? Let's go against this. Let's get Nasubi out. I'm going to have this child with Beyond Netero. Dwazul has a child with Beyond Netero. Saradnik. To give Saradnik even more standing than any other being whatsoever, Unma gives up her child Hulkenberg to swap with Saradnik, poses Saradnik as a son of the first of the first queen, giving him the status similar to Prince Benjamin, and also at the same time putting Hulkenberg in a family of people that aren't related to him, and of course Dwazul, a queen that's going to resent someone that she had to give up her real child for. But also at the same time, who's to say that Saradnik is even Dwazul's child? Who's to say that there isn't a third person involved in all of this that was casted aside like one of the sacrificial lambs? Who's to say that Morena, someone who we don't even know where they got their Nen ability from, they definitely have a very strong connection to Nen and being a hunter in general, has full wants to not only betray Saradnik, but betray the entire Kakan Empire and not just sink the succession war, but metaphorically sink the black whale entirely in this whole entire trip because she wants to destroy the world and she hates everything. Like, it would make sense that someone who was meant to be royalty and then was scarred as an illegitimate child, all in favor of Beyond Netero's goals or Beyond Netero's plans or making Saradnik the king eventually down the line, it makes sense why she would be such an evil person. Now, again, I don't think Marina has that layer of evidence to go with that, but all I'm saying is it's not out of left field to also assume that there's a third person involved in this baby swap that we either know about and isn't aware or we don't know about yet. Now, that is all just a theory. Again, I will say that Hulkenberg can sit on B tier with Camilla and Tebepa. I may even raise him higher just based off the fact that there is currently the red herring of the secrets surrounding his birth. And again, while that could have everything to do with the baby swap theory of Saradnik and Hulkenberg, again, look at Hulkenberg next to Prince Benjamin and fucking Queen Unma. They look literally identical. But also at the same time, right after that, look at Saradnik next to motherfucking Beyond or Isaac Netero. Look at Saradnik, look at young Isaac Netero, and tell me these aren't the spitting images of each other. On top of the fact that Saradnik has such an insane level of potential when it comes to Nen, to the point that he has not only been given a guardian spirit beast by the Succession War, he has literally birthed his own Nen beast that's able to work in Zetsu, and he also has his own Nen ability that is essentially like a King Crimson oriented ability. Yes, Saradnik did not know Nen before birth. Yes, Hulkenberg did not know Nen before birth, or at birth. But again, I think I've made a point in the very beginning of this segment why that necessarily does not matter. Because if we were to assume that the sacrificial lambs, the cursed children of Netero that were left as discarded trash, left as time bombs to help the Beyond Netero child, it's quite possible that the Beyond Netero child prince was not attacked at birth and was left to develop Nen on their own. Now, again, that could be wrong. But I think Saradnik, if anybody, right now has the highest potential to be a Netero child. At this very moment, again, I think Hulkenberg is a red herring. I think Hulkenberg is much more likely to be born of Queen Unma and not of Queen Dwazul. It would also make sense if Dwazul had this forced upon her, and Beyond Netero literally forced Unma and Dwazul to Beyond forced Unma to take Saradnik, and then drop drop Hulkenberg to a lower status queen. That explains not only Dwazul's hatred of Hulkenberg, while again, I will admit, being a Beyond Netero child could also explain the hatred and the ostracization from the family. I do also think, to a lot of people that are mentioning this, if Nasubi was aware that Hulkenberg was an illegitimate child, I don't think Nasubi would have kept him as the 9th prince. I think the Beyond Netero child is only aware of the queen who birthed it. Potentially, if we are to assume the Saradnik baby swap scheme, it would only be Queen Unma and Dwazul, as well as Netero, that were aware of this. Let alone if it's not Hulkenberg or someone else entirely, there's only going to be one queen that's aware of it entirely. I don't think the rest of the family would, so it does not explain Hulkenberg's ostracization from the rest of the Kaken Empire. If anything, I think it just makes more sense because he's more westernized, went to school in another place, and has much more liberal ideas than the authoritarian empire that is the Kaken Empire, and all of the princes that are much more willing to carry on their reign as emperor when they win. I think that very much makes sense as to why the other princes would not like Hulkenberg. And I think, if anything, the baby swap theory makes sense why Saradnik and Hulkenberg would be very close. Because whether Hulkenberg is aware of it or not, Saradnik might be aware of what Hulkenberg has had to do, or Saradnik might feel pity or whatever, so Saradnik might have taken in Hulkenberg and been the only prince to accept Hulkenberg, because Saradnik knows that what Hulkenberg has had to endure because of him. It makes sense to me, but again, this could be all theory. Who knows? Only Tagashi knows. Again, I did mention why it's very unlikely, the reasons why it's very unlikely for a young prince to be the child, simply because it's weird for Beyond to stake a 30-year plan on a child being born at the last moment, right? So Wobley was born literal weeks to months before the Succession War began. So Wobley was literally born right before the Succession War started. You could also pose that as an interesting coincidence, right? The Chimera Ants get let loose. Chimera Ants kill Isaac Netero, which releases the conditions for Beyond Netero to start exploring the Dark Continent. Beyond Netero takes motions and actions now that his father is dead with the Kaken Empire to start doing everything, and then the Succession War begins on the boat to the Dark Continent. So who's to say that Wobley being born was not part of the beginning of Beyond's plans? Wobley was born, Isaac died, Kaken Empire is ready to go, Beyond begins his plan. Now that he has his heir. Again, very weird that he would entrust the winning of the Succession War to a month-old baby that has no will of their own. Granted, we do have the big mystery of the evil Nen aura emerging from Wobley before the Succession War began. However, I believe at this point, Wobley had already touched the urn for the urn ceremony, so it's quite possible that is the awakening of the Guardian Spirit Beast. You also have the fact that Oito seems very surprised at the fact of Beyond Netero being infiltrating the Succession War. And Oito, one, doesn't seem like the type to keep a lie very well. She doesn't have the composure of doing all of this shit. She's very inexperienced in the political world as a whole. Bill, when Kurapika gives Queen Oito a Nen ability, she's deemed very lackluster for Nen. Bill says that she has no potential, very mediocre level and potential for Nen use. So she not only would be a not very likely candidate for Beyond to want to conceive a child with, she's also very much so very likely not, able to produce the perfect heir for Beyond that he wanted. And two, she's not very, good at hiding. She seems very surprised by the reveal. Wobley is there's too much that Beyond is leaving to chance with Wobley. Not only that, Wobley is one of the most targeted princes of all time because they're so young and so easy to eliminate, right? That's why Kurapika has had such a hard time in the Succession War and why Wobley has had multiple assassination attempts going their way. Why would Beyond stake everything on a child that, again, has no agency and can't enact their own nen ability or their own powers, their own political scheming, their own soldier and bodyguard moving, let alone, we already know the Guardian Spirit Beast can't be controlled by them at all. So unless Wobley was born with an ungodly powerful Guardian Spirit Beast out of luck, seems like a lot of chances Beyond is putting on Wobley here. So while I will admit that I would honestly probably more likely put Wobley in C, I think that's probably where I'll keep Wobley, because there's just, if it is Wobley, it makes no sense whatsoever. It's a terrible plan on Beyond's part. Is there a possibility that multiple princes could be Beyond's kid? I do think that is very possible. However, we're already having so much trouble pinning one of the princes as a Beyond child. It's pretty unlikely that multiple of them would be Beyond children, unless my Queen Dwazul conspiracy is to be believed, and Queen Dwazul has been popping out Beyond Netero children since the very beginning. Because again, Camilla, Tubeppa, Luzerus, Saradnik, you've got 4 of the most likely princes to be Netero children, all coming from Queen Dwazul. I'm sorry, well, Saradnik technically is from Uma, technically, depending on the lore you choose to believe. Hulkenberg is from Dwazul. Either way, if multiple of these children are Beyonds, what if, I mean, Tubeppa and Luzerus look very different than Camilla. Imagine Camilla is the only naturalized, actual legitimate child, and Tubeppa and Luzerus and Hulkenberg are all Beyond children, or just Luzerus and Tubeppa. I wouldn't think that's possible. But yeah, I think for as calculated as Beyond is, I think for the exact reasons we can take first Prince Benjamin off the list is the exact reason we can take Prince Wobley off the list. Although I could be wrong, because again, that evil Nen aura surrounding Wobley is suspicious. But I think that has to do with something else entirely. Also, with Kurapika being aware of the sacrificial lamb curse with Long He, if Kurapika chooses to use Gyo on anybody, he would see the curse on Wobley. Because if that's the case, again, how I've mentioned how being cursed at birth is not a direct condition of the Beyond Netero child, that would mean Wobley was cursed at birth, which is interesting, yet again, not confirmed. I think Wobley is one of the least likely to be it. Definitely. Not completely outruled, because same like Zhonglei, like not completely outruled, like Togashi could throw a curveball on us with these two, but very, very unlikely. The next candidate is Prince Mariam, who I would put even above Prince Luzerus. I might even move Prince Mariam to an S, because they have a lot of things going for them actually as well. Let me explain and I'll deem why. Prince Mariam is interesting, and I even talked myself even more into believing why it might be Mariam in this video alone, not in this video, but in this stream alone, talking about Silent Majority. While it does kind of go with the argument of why would Beyond trust a younger child that is less competent and less capable in a war of succession where people are going to be coming at them and trying to kill them entirely. But at the same time, there are subtle things and subtle hints to believe that Mariam could be a Netero child. Granted, he's very young, and because Mariam is very young, his traits of Netero or Beyond Netero might not show, right? Like his nose, his ears, his defining traits may not show completely. One thing that I want to harp on is his mother, Queen Savanti, is much more likely to be involved in the Beyond scheme than Mariam himself, right? So let's look at Queen Savanti right now as a potential threat. Because remember, Queen Savanti had 2 children. She had Prince Mariam and Prince Momose. Yet, she doesn't give a fuck about Momose whatsoever. She does not care about Momose so much that she is the one that specifically removes Momose's bodyguards from her because she believes that Prince Mariam requires more security. So she clearly has a favorite child, which is Mariam. She wants Mariam to be safe and sound at all possible times and is always with him. Momose, her daughter, she specifically removes Momose's guards to better protect Mariam And although she seems upset that Momose died after she removed those guards, removing those guards is the exact reason why Momose was able to be murdered in the first place. So it's quite honestly possible that even though she feels sad about it, that was a direct plan. That was a direct play by Savante to eliminate competition. That was very suspicious given the times of the war. No, literally, I thought it was just plain old misogyny or favoritism, but him being Beyond's kid makes sense. Yeah, so think about it. If he is Beyond's child, that makes one so much more sense why a mom would be much more favorited towards one of her children. Why she would willingly be able to sacrifice one of them because she knows one of them is hell of a lot more important to her, but to the succession war, to Beyond, to the future as a whole. So while Miriam is a child that doesn't really seem to have much control over Nen, I think Prince Miriam is suspect. So Miriam himself has not revealed the use of any Nen, but remember that's not necessarily required of the chosen Nen, the chosen Netero child. And also, it's interesting that Miriam's guardian spirit beast, of all people, would be the most defensive spirit beast of all time. This guardian spirit beast literally has its own purpose of just protecting Miriam at all costs, whether it be by turning his room into an alternate dimension. That way, anyone that walks into the room is immediately transported to a different dimension and not the correct pocket dimension. But also, we see the spirit beast threaten threaten Hanzo directly with attack. Its size changes depending on Miriam's mood. So Miriam does have a very strong guardian Nen beast. And again, it could be quite possible that Miriam hasn't awakened a Nen yet, because not only did they not need to be cursed because they had all the traits Beyond Netero was looking for, if Queen Savante is very clearly on board with the Beyond Netero scheme, not only does it make sense she'd murder her daughter, it also makes sense why she would send Bellorante to the Nen training with Kurapika. Because one thing that is super duper suspect, and I mentioned this in my Silent Majority video if you checked it out, one thing that makes Bellorante as much of a suspect in Silent Majority as someone like Salaka is not only does Bellorante sure reveal himself to be a Nen user, he's also a hunter. He's not involved in the Kaken royal family at all, which means he doesn't come from the royal guard. He doesn't come from Prince Benjamin's side. He doesn't come from the unwanted or a soldier. He's not Beyond Netero's child. He's a hunter that passed the hunter exam on his own. However, we know that not only does Beyond have multiple hunters snuck into the succession war that are fully, ready to fuck with the succession war entirely, there are different layers to Beyond's expedition, the people he employs, right? Bill was surprised by Beyond's child. However, Bellorante chooses to speak with Bill privately for 10 minutes instead of reporting to Kurapika during the Nen training. And if that's the case, we know Bill is also a Beyond Netero hunter from the expedition. So it's already proven that random hunters can get pulled into the fray and get pulled into any prince. The same way Kurapika, Biscuit, Melody, all of these people did through the Hunter dark web, take on mercenary jobs. So Bellorante not only has no reason to care about the succession war, the princes that die in it, the consequences to the Kaken Empire's policies and politics, which we get confirmed by, as he mentions that, hey, I'm a hunter, I'll do this job and then it's right on to the next job. With Queen Savante sending Bellorante to Kurapika's Nen trainings and telling Bellorante specifically to make sure Kurapika's teaching Nen correctly. That means Savante 1 knows about Nen, is very aware about Nen. She's sending a hunter to go make sure Nen is taught correctly. Although all Bellorante does is goof off and just chill out and around the Nen training. He hasn't been assessed by Kurapika yet. And also he admits he's a Nen user. Furikov knows that obviously Bellorante is a Nen user, although he admits he can't find Silent Majority's user. He knows there's 4 Nen users that aren't able to completely hide their Nen, And he also knows that there are other users in the room that are completely hiding their nen that he's not aware of. Owner of Silent Majority could be Salaka, as I mentioned in the Silent Majority video, which is, you know, a guard of, I think he's one of Queen Dwazul's spies, which again could be everything to do with Beyond if Dwazul is involved in the Beyond conspiracy. But they were a member of 3rd Prince's guard, and now they're assigned to 14th Prince Woble. Very sus. Very sus. They're assigned by Queen Unma to go to Prince Woble. If Bellorante does come out to be the Silent Majority user, and again, if I didn't explain that very well, check out my Silent Majority video. I'm not going to go into all this detail that I did in that video. That's too much. But if Bellorante is revealed to be the Silent Majority wielder and user that's disrupting the Nen training and trying to stop the Succession War from being suspended like Kurapika wants and just move more chaos down the ladder, it would make sense that the hunter that's employed by Miriam, who in this case would be Beyond Netero's child and working for Queen Savanti, would have no care if they disrupt the Succession War, because again, imagine Bellorante accidentally killed Long He. That would activate the curse in Long He and take out one of the princes as far as Long He is concerned. So Bellorante can kill whoever he wants on the Succession War, because one, he's assigned to, in this case, if we're assuming Miriam is Beyond Netero's child, he's assigned to Beyond Netero's child. So any person that Bellorante kills is not going to affect Miriam, because again, if we're to say that Long He's deductions are correct, the only prince that won't have a curse from one of the discarded sacrificial lambs is Beyond Netero's child. So even if Bellorante sets off an accidental curse time bomb, it's not going to blow back on Miriam, it's going to go blow back on one of the other princes. While I think Sorodnik, one, looks a heck of a lot more like a young Isaac Netero, has a lot more Nen potential, has the potential conspiracy of Queen Unma and Dwazul swapping children to slip in a Beyond Netero baby. I think it is a big potential possibility Sorodnik is the Netero child, but I don't think we can discount Miriam either. Sorodnik, I think, has more things going for him, whereas Miriam, some things need to be true, like for one, Beyond discarding all of the sacrificial lambs because he was looking for the perfect child and he didn't get one until Miriam. And the fact that Beyond is willing to stake his whole plan on a child that is not even actively participating in the war and hoping that Queen Savanti can do his dirty work for him by protecting Miriam and doing the best she can to play an active role in the Succession War for her son. Which, funnily enough, Savanti sends Bellorante to Kurapika's Nen lesson the day after Momose is killed, because supposedly she is upset that the bodyguards conspired against her death. So again, is Savanti playing 5D chess? Is she unwilling and not realizing what Beyond has set for her daughter and for her son, and she's just playing in his hand perfectly? Or is Beyond doing what makes the most fucking sense and putting all of his marbles on a very well played, competent prince in the Kaken Empire who is directly related, quote unquote, to the first queen, the king, and I think Sorodnik is the clear answer to being the Netero child, but Miriam is the next best guess. I think Miriam has a couple things that may go against him, but he also has more things going for him than everyone else on the list here. And again, Loserus is in the in-between state, because it's possible with how laid back he's been playing, the mystery has just been playing in his hands and he hasn't revealed himself too much yet to us. His potentiality of having a Nen ability outside of his Guardian Spirit Beast is possible, and I think with how in deep he is with the underground Kaken Empire, the underground Kaken Mafia, he would be he has his eggs in the right baskets to be a successful king. But I think Sorodnik plays all of Loserus conditions 10 times better than Loserus does. And again, I would probably put Miriam just a little bit below Sorodnik, above Loserus, but below Sorodnik. But in my honest opinion, these two are the most likely candidates. But if I was a betting man, I would bet mostly on Sorodnik. But anyway, that is my tier list of who's most likely to be the Netero baby. Let me know what you guys think for sure. I'd be happy to hear your guys' opinions, and or if you think your chosen Netero baby is ranked too low. Again, I know a lot of people are going to be gunning for Hulkenberg, especially after 402, but I think the secrets of his birth are a little bit more layered than that. And I don't think Hulkenberg would be revealed to Kurapika as Netero's child, or to us as quickly as it was revealed Netero had children. But we could be wrong. Again, but Occam's razor, the most obvious answer to me is the Isaac Netero in the fucking room with us right now, which is Sarodnik. But yeah, that's that.